We're following breaking news this morning. President Biden has officially blocked Nippon Steel's $14.9 billion takeover of U.S. Steel. The White House announcing the decision today, citing national security concerns. Joining me now for more, we've got Jamil Jaffer, George Mason University's founder and executive director of the National Security Institute. Jamil, thank you for coming on to break this news down for us. I want to start on this national security risk. How much of that is an accurate depiction of the reason to block this deal?
Well, Madison, one of the challenges here is that the committee that's in charge of looking at these things, it's an interagency committee made up of federal agencies, including the Treasury Department, the Justice Department, Commerce, and the like. They didn't weigh in on the national security risk. They essentially said, we're going to take a pass on this. We'll punt it over to the political team at the White House to make the judgment call. They're the ones charged with assessing national security risk. They did highlight some concerns here, obviously, of a foreign takeover of the number 3 largest U.S. steel company, but obviously a challenge as well because these are allies. We're talking about the Japanese. We're not talking about an adversary nation state. And so that trade-off of how do you work with allies on one side, raising obvious concerns and labor concerns that I think are motivating a lot of this there in Pennsylvania. 20,000 jobs in total at U.S. Steel, 2,000 in particular there in Pennsylvania itself.
20,000 jobs is significant, especially at a time when, from a market's perspective, we are monitoring every single potential impact to the labor market. Do you think that that potential macro impact is something that could outweigh any of the national security concerns that this incoming administration might have, which could continue to lead to more of an idea of blocking this deal?
Yeah, look, Madison, I think the Trump administration has been very clear about this. They share the national security and economic security concerns that arise coming out of this transaction. At the end of the day, we've always thought about this. We've never really said it out loud until fairly recently, but economic security is national security. It's most obvious in the case of China and our challenge that we face with that nation in particular. But this is a key part of national security, and you've got to weigh in those job losses. Look, U.S. Steel with 20,000 jobs is a lot of jobs. Used to be 350,000+ jobs at U.S. Steel. So, obviously that market in the United States has faced a challenge, but we've seen the mistakes of not focusing on strategic markets like semiconductors that have long-term national security impacts. And so this administration and the next administration is focused on those things. Steel is going to be part of that conversation.
Right. It was interesting. We spoke with an analyst earlier who covers U.S. Steel and steel particularly, and he talked about how we have seen that U.S. investment in bringing chips production domestic, and we haven't necessarily seen the same level of motivation when it comes to steel production. What do you make of that approach from the federal government, and do you think this incoming administration could approach that differently?
Yeah, I do think that this administration is going to be very focused on supply chain issues, things like core production, like steel, like semiconductors. We've for many years have allowed a lot of that production to flow overseas, particularly to China. I think we have learned the lesson of that. We saw it early in the pandemic with pharmaceutical precursors, with protective gear and the like. And there's much more to be done on that front. We're not going to bring all that manufacturing back to the United States. It's just not realistic. But can we ally shore it? Can we bring it to places that are other than China? And so the question then is, okay, if you're going to ally shore, right, what's the challenge with an ally, Japan or a Japanese company, buying a U.S. steel company? And that's, I think, where this question plays out. If we're going to say we're going to work with allies on one front, how does it play out on the steel front? We got to keep some of that production here, but we also got to be able to work with our allies. That's the hard part of the trade, Madison, here, and I'm not sure we've quite figured it out. This administration, the new incoming administration, will absolutely be focused on how to find that trade right. Remember, President Trump, very pumped about the SoftBank investment here in the United States in artificial intelligence. That's a Japanese investment fund as well.